joyful. Although I didn't think that last night on the drive over because it was raining and it was dark. And I thought to myself, oh no, more of Singapore. Because that's all it's done in Singapore the last few weeks is rain. But hey, this morning, woke up, sunshine, real sunshine. So a good note to start ATEC on. Thank you for inviting me to MC this important conference, John, Felicia. It's a great honor. For those who may know me, my name is Siu Hoon from Singapore. I run Web and Travel. And I have written about Australia's various campaigns. I have watched Australia's tourism industry through its ups and downs. I have many friends here, and so I feel really close to this country. So anyway, to get me in the mood for Australia, for my Australian adventure, I watched an in-flight documentary last night on Singapore Airlines. And it was called The Koala Hospital. Have you seen it? So anyway, it's about this hospital in Port Macquarie. It's been running for 40 years and it treats injured koalas. And the three main reasons, why is everybody so quiet? Anyway, the three main reasons for injuries to koala are, can you guess? Number one, road accidents. Number two, dog attacks. You are well educated. And number three, diseases. So here's what I also learned about koalas. Apparently they sleep 18 hours a day. And I think it's because of the eucalyptus they inhale, because that's the only thing they eat. But on the way coming over, I was thinking, hey, that's not a bad life actually. Because in today's age of instant mass distraction, when we are either Twittering or Googling or Facebooking or YouTubing, I think it's nice to get some sleep. Especially for all of us who travel a lot, like Andrew and Simon, who's been telling me that they've been crisscrossing, and Robbie, who's been to Vietnam last weekend. I mean, we are traveling all the time, and so sometimes we need to catch up on sleep, like the koalas. But that's one thing that you're not going to be doing this morning, because we intend to keep you fully engaged this morning with our sessions. And the theme of this conference is, let's see, past reflections, future directions. And it brings to mind an old Chinese saying. All Chinese sayings are old, by the way. And it says, 好马不吃回头草. And what it means is that a good horse never returns to the same meadow to graze. Because it implies that while reflection is healthy, and because it helps you to learn and gives you perspectives, what you should absolutely focus on is what's now and what's ahead. Now, Steve Jobs also said, there is a sense here that we are all here influencing the future. And I hope that this symposium will provide the perfect platform for all of you to reflect on the future and think about what's ahead. Now let's take a look back to give you a sense of where you've been with ATEC ITOA.
Australia, what's your favourite sport? Football. Snake? Pie. Animal? Kangaroo. And what's your favourite car, Australia? Holland. Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We started our business in 1970.
Those were the days where nobody had a program to Australia, a wholesale program.
Australia was like an old whore. Everyone knew where she was and who she was, but no one wanted to go there.
We focused on the international market.
Tourists. Australia is crawling with tourists.
People used to think Australia had kangaroos jumping down the street, and we had koalas in our backyards.
And I know who's to blame. I know. Qantas.
When ITOA first started, I was actually working for TAA in London.
I actually worked for Qantas as a lunch boy.
I hate Qantas.
I know a lot of people won't know what TAA is anymore.
Up and away with TAA, the friendly way.
We had to sell Australia. Nobody knew what our products were. We were selling Australia first.
All of us sold Australia. We didn't sell our own company, didn't go out to sell our own companies.
We all helped each other. We were all one big family.
The rest of the world just began to look at Australia.
300,000 came at that time.
We started an inbound company when there were very few companies around. I think we were one of 2 specialist companies in Australia to do it in 1973.
Our major markets in those days were Europe and America.
A lot of the industry were really wondering why we would even look at Asia.
The bulk of packages coming from North America, for example, came through New Zealand into Sydney, down to Canberra, Melbourne, out through Sydney. So everything went through Sydney.
Japan was just a fledgling market at that stage.
North Americans, they said to me, you've got bathrooms? I said, no, we've got a shovel and a roll and toilet paper and we teach you how to do that.
If you go through the people who were chairman of ITOA in that period, through the 70s and all that, you'll get a wonderful array of the pioneer leaders, you know, of the industry.
The Germans would say, wunderbar, nothing. And the people that say to me, what did you sell the Germans? I said, nothing.
Australia needed a body that was going to steer it in the international markets.
Well, there was an inbound association which was part of AFTA.
ITOA was originally formed with a few inbound operators in Sydney.
Well, we changed the name from ATOA, which was Australian Industry Tourism Operators Association, to ITOA, which was the Inbound Tour Operators Association of Australia.
The attraction for a supplier to be part of ITOA, and today ATEC, is probably still the same, and that is to get close to inbound tour operators.
I think ITOA, an example of what it did, was just so important in helping knit together a strong team of Australians, not a little team now, a strong team that's working in coordination to do the marketing.
There's so many people that, you know, John King, who's still there, he did one hell of a lot for Australia. And there's so many people around still that are still doing good things as well, which I think is great.
And we came up with the word symposium because it was having fun drinking wine, I think was the definition.
How long I've been here is I know some of the people in that video, and we have John King, who is still here. I want to say before I introduce John to lead you into the future, is one of the things that I love about Australia is your sense of humor. Imagine if we had a video in Singapore that called Singapore an old whore. And that we actually had people who say, I hate Singapore Airlines. Can you imagine what would happen to us? That's why I love coming here, because I can be irreverent. The conference is meant for you and to improve on it every year. So we have the kiosks out there and students from the University of Canberra. So we're going to do the survey on site. So as you're feeling passionate and emotional about the conference, share your feelings with the students out there, please. Now, please welcome John King, who is still here to lead you into the future.
Thank you, Sir Hearn. It is great to have you back in Australia again. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to, first of all, on behalf of ATEC, have a number of very special guests who have joined us here today, and to give them a special welcome. And first of all, I would like to recognise and welcome the Honourable Martin Ferguson, the Minister for Resources, Energy and Tourism, who's once again with us here. And I say once again because Martin attended his first symposium back, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, when he was first made Shadow Minister for Tourism. And he's attended every one of our symposiums except one, and that was last year when he had to go overseas. And through that time, I've got to say that we've established a very, very close and for most part, a very harmonious and certainly a very productive working relationship from our point of view. And during that time, he's established not only a very strong level of support for our sector, but a very, very clear understanding of it. And so I'm delighted that Martin is able to join us again on this occasion. We also have a number of overseas guests that are joining with us, some of whom are speaking, but I'd particularly like to welcome Martin Horgan, who's chairman of the newly renamed Tourism Export Council of New Zealand, and Leslie Inman, their CEO. And there's a little story behind that. I went and spoke to their conference in August last year and spoke about the reasons why we as an organisation had changed our name to the Tourism Export Council, and they have followed suit, and so I'm even able to welcome a closer relationship that we now enjoy with our New Zealand counterparts. To Andrew McAvoy, the Managing Director of Tourism Australia, Anthony Hayes, the CEO of Tourism Queensland, John Fitzgerald, the CEO of Tourism NT, Steve Cooper and the board members of Sunshine Coast Tourism. And wasn't that a great welcome we had this morning, and particularly from the industry and also from the Cubby people. The welcomes that they have provided on two of the occasions this week have been among the best welcomes to country, I've got to say, that I've seen. To Lyndall Gray, to the ATEC board, to Stephen Thompson and the Qantas team, again, as I was just saying to the Minister, the amount of support that we as an industry get from Qantas in many untold ways is just enormous, and we again appreciate that. And thank you also, welcome ladies and gentlemen, for being here. We're about just on 400 in number. I want to sound, with all due respect to the Minister, I need to sound a little bit like a politician and say that that clip that was there was taken a little out of context. In 1983, Australia thought it had really made it in the US market. We'd just won the America's Cup. There was a book that had just been released, The Thornbirds by Colleen McCulloch, and there was a whole range of other things that Australia had achieved. And so the tourism industry sat back and thought, you know, we've made it, this will bring floods of tourists in. But nothing happened. And during that same year, I was invited on board a US warship in Port Melbourne to a reception in the officers' wardroom, and events or functions on board US warships tend to be pretty boring because they don't have any alcohol on board. And so I wandered around, and up on the bulkhead there was this very large poster that was framed, and it likened certain countries and cities around the world to certain types of women. And this was before the issue of female members of the crew on board the US ships. And they had this whole list of different countries and cities, and right on the bottom of this list was Australia, with the comment, she's like the old whore, everyone knows where she is, but no one wants to go there. And that was very much the situation that existed until the following year in 1984, when the Hogan campaign hit, that started to give reasons not only about Australia, but why they needed to come and visit. And that was what turned on the US market, and we'll be hearing more about that over the course of the next couple of days. This symposium marks 40 years since ATOA, or ATEC, was first formed. In 1972, which was the year of our birth, there were 426 and 402 overseas arrivals in Australia, and if I had more time I could give you their names. This included, of course, the tail end of the R&R program with US servicemen from Vietnam spending time in Sydney particularly. The total value of tourism in that year was $771 million. The principal markets were New Zealand, the US and the UK, which was mainly VFR, and a few Germans. There was virtually no Asian market to Australia. Japanese outbound travel was in its very, very early embryonic stages, and at that stage had not reached Australia. The Australian Tourist Commission, as it then was only 5 years old, and it had just recently received its first big boost in funding, going from $3 million a year to $10 million a year. Business communications between countries was by telex, and travellers had no other option than booking through a travel agent, and a very structured distribution system was still a work in progress. With a handful of strange new breed of people called inbound tour operators having recently established their business, all located in Sydney, and with the only international air terminal in the country having just opened 1 year beforehand, also in Sydney. The Inbound Tour Operators Association, which later became the Inbound Tourism Organisation of Australia, was formed by a small band of these ITOs, initially under the Australian Federation of Travel Agents, to provide a voice for inbound tourism and as a means of learning through shared experience about this new business of inbound tourism and to develop this fledgling industry. And what a change we see today in the situation and the circumstance in which we work. This year we'll hopefully achieve 6 million visitors in 1 year, and our sector will earn more than $24 billion for Australia in export earnings. Today, almost half our inbound visitors come from Asia. And within the next few years, China, which in 1972 was regarded as impoverished, and for the rest of the world was largely an enigma, will become our largest market by visitor numbers and is already our largest income earner. Today, international communication is borderless, and access to travel information is available to all. The role that our industry and the rest of the distribution channel previously had as gatekeeper of information has been removed from the travel industry, and the customer, not the distribution channel, controls the distribution process. So in casting our eye back over those 40 years, we can only wonder how those who formed this organisation view the profound changes that have taken place and indeed the size of the industry they founded. The circumstances within which we all work, either within ATEC or within our own businesses, has changed beyond all recognition, and consequently how we work could not have been imagined 40 years ago. But I suggest to you that both the key essentials that drive this industry and this organisation and its success and the basic role of this organisation itself have remained largely constant through that time. ATEC is still very much the voice of inbound tourism. However, the way we undertake our advocacy and on your behalf has changed radically. The development of our inbound sector, the enhancement of and the exchange of knowledge and insights, the improvement of performance and standards as an industry are all still key roles of this organisation as they were at the outset in 1972. But the way we undertake that role has changed and needs to change further as the pace of change and as we look to the next 20 and 40 years will change even more dramatically into the future. So we must change to remain relevant and to continue to fulfil the purpose of our establishment 40 years ago. Last year, Felicia presented a draft strategy which very much focused on this core role of getting back to and reaffirming the basics, but creating a more effective and more contemporary way of doing it. Tomorrow she'll update you on the substance we've attached to the framework and the direction she proposed when we met on Hamilton Island at this symposium last year, and which you very positively and subsequently endorsed in meetings around Australia in the ensuing months. In suggesting the key essentials and key characteristics that both led to the establishment of this sector and this organisation have remained constant, I nevertheless have some concerns. The things that kicked this sector off and which drove enormous growth in development and international regard for this new kid on the block of international tourism were things like an almost unbridled sense of entrepreneurship. The ability to have a dream, a vision, and the tenacity to see it come to fruition, often on the smell of an oily rag. And I noted, for example, the likes of Bill King, and those who ever get a chance to read his book, which was released earlier this year, I would strongly recommend that to you. An almost endless optimism, sometimes misguided, sometimes naive, an excitement operators got and shared from seeing the sense of excitement and wonder from their passengers and guests. An ability to think big and see the bigger picture. An ability to look beyond today to their own immediate interests and their own immediate location and environment, to ensure the growth and the development of this then fledgling industry. About 10 days ago, I shared a couple of beers with David Scosil. David is the CEO of the World Travel and Tourism Council. He was reflecting that when he frequently came to Australia, and he was a previous senior executive with British Airways, and he was on Les Cassar's board at Concord Travel, he always came away with a sense of excitement, a sense of optimism, and confidence that the Australian tourism industry knew where it was going and confident it was going to get there. But then he said something to me that, even though I'd only had a couple of beers, sobered me up. And that was that he no longer gets that feeling. He said to me, as an outside and interested observer, I believe the Australian tourism industry has largely lost its vision, its confidence, and has become somewhat inward-looking. And I know that the last few years have been especially tough, that there's been an almost endless tsunami of government regulation, and I emphasise government at all three levels, of red tape, inflexible and sometimes inappropriate labour laws and imposed costs, which in many respects are destroying our competitiveness. And in many cases it's increasingly difficult to get on and to do the things that we do best. But having said that, we can't afford, I'd suggest, to allow those things to destroy the very things that need to underpin not only our industry, but our role in industry. The dynamism and those characteristics that are essential to shape and drive our industry, and which have traditionally set us apart from other industries in Australia. As Sue Hoon said in her opening comments, we need to focus on the future. In looking around our industry and around Australia, there are companies and areas that are doing relatively well. There are companies and destinations that have adjusted better to the enormous changes, the new realities, and the new opportunities that they bring. In Felicia's presentation tomorrow, and in some of the exciting initiatives we'll hopefully be in a position to reveal in the near future, she'll be outlining how ATEC will be providing more insights, better knowledge, and a stronger platform to better enable our industry to reclaim its future and its prospects. They say that life begins at 40, and from my position, and speaking personally, I don't know all about that, but at 40 we can once again reaffirm that vision that established this organisation and this industry 40 years ago, and those values that really have created the industry we have today. So I hope you have a very enjoyable, informative and fulfilling time at Symposium, and also you'll get a chance to see some of the stars of the screen, the video, some of the pioneers when we have our gala and celebratory 40th anniversary dinner on Friday night in this room. So have a great conference, and thank you for your attendance.